Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Speak Your Mind with Larry Cox. It is great to have you guys, and I think people are starting to find the show and be on here. And I do want to apologize again. I know it has been a little bit of a issue here with the rebranding and everything, but I did think it was necessary to do the rebranding because of the confusion with the names of this week from and in and all that with Rockdale. But you guys are here. You're beginning to join, share, like the show. That way, we'll grow the audience, and it'll be very important for people to know what's going on. So tonight we do have a special guest with us tonight. We have Miss Madeline Reese tonight, and she actually runs the Against Biolab Facebook page that has been out there, and I think she is very active and very knowledgeable of what's going on here with Biolab. So at this time, if you guys wouldn't mind, we will welcome Miss Madeline Reese to the show. Madeline, how are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you, Larry?
I am doing good. I'm going to actually be flipping the show around here a little bit. So I'm really good. I'm glad to have you here tonight. We've been trying to hook up the last few a few shows and had some things going on, but we've got you here tonight, and it's good to have you. And we're going to talk all things biolab. Why not, right? So,
Yeah.
this is the thing about it. A company like Biolab or any kind of company that has one of these incidents that happens in America or anywhere around the world, the most valuable thing that they have is time. As time passes and people forget and they go about their lives, they forget the incident that happened, and they forget of about those people who were actually impacted by the event that their company caused anybody. So with me, it's very personal. Not going to forget anytime soon because just for people to know, for my circumstance right now, I'm actually leasing three properties at the same time right now, dealing with the fallout of this. I'm leasing the original property at Olympic Court across the road from Biolab. I'm renting a temporary location, and I'm renting leasing a location we're going to be permanently moving to that we're going to purchase. So it is cost a significant cost for us, and like this is what people think. Well, Biolab, they said they've been reaching out to the community, reaching out to whatever. We and I know my neighbors, my other business people that are right across the road and right next, they have not reached out to one single business who was directly impacted, and it's not what they do or will do. So,
Mm-hmm.
so Madeline, so tell us a little bit about you and why and how this incident impacted you directly, and why you decided to get involved.
Yeah, I mean, I've lived in Rockdale coming up on 4 years. So I'm relatively new, right? I haven't been admittedly overly involved in this community. I've lived in a bit of a bubble, right? I work from home. My job is kind of my life. And then Biolab happened, and I felt like just catapulted into understanding. My eyes were really open, and I've learned so much about this community, and as negative as so much of what has come out of Biolab. I would also say, like, I've learned this is an incredible community with a lot of heart. I really started, I think it was I want to say it was about 2.5 weeks post Biolab. Like everybody else, I was watching everything, trying to understand. Rockdale County government would, go live occasionally. And I felt, I had this running list of questions I really wanted answers for. And I felt those weren't even being addressed, or if people were asking them, they weren't being directly answered. And so my frustration continued and continued. And I think there was a Q&A kind of town hall where people really did voice a lot of the same questions I had. And I felt those weren't answered. And I was frustrated that, well, how can we create an outlet where these get answered? Well, the benefit of social media is we can get organized that way. So I started the Facebook group, with a couple intentions. One, just a place for people to share information, right? This is what I'm experiencing, or is everybody else experiencing the same thing? Is this a one-off? All of these different pieces, and then equally a place where we can kind of get organized and figure out, where can we push back as a community, so that BioLab doesn't reopen, so that we get the answers we need already happened. And it's become a fabulous community of people that really are pushing hard to see these changes happen. I've personally, I've been outspoken that, my health has suffered. Also, my horse has been in critical condition from what happened at BioLab. And that's been a real struggle for me. So I feel this very, very personally, and I am very passionate about making sure, not just for myself, but this community, that we get the answers and we see the change that we need.
Well, this is the thing about it, right? So if something does impact this community, you'll find that there are a lot of citizens in Rockdale County that immediately jump in and they want to be involved, and they stand right up for Rockdale. And you've probably experienced that now as you've been in this journey, that there are many of us that, we love our community, and we fight for Rockdale. I mean, I think a lot of people are aware of that because they saw this last election cycle and what happened with the citizens of Rockdale fighting for Rockdale and sending longtime incumbents packing and out of local government. And then also, that's one of the things that I think you and I have been discussing, that you through being, just newly becoming involved, became very frustrated, I believe, with the messaging that Rockdale County government was doing and their involvement and how they treated people or not treated people or ignored people. So people have heard, citizens have heard people like me echoing this for years, right? So what I'd love to hear is, for you, someone who's just started getting involved, what's been your experience, Madeline, with just, you thought probably one thing about government and how they'll respond, and then reality hit with you. Let's talk about your reality.
Yeah, I mean, infuriating would be the understatement of the century. I think, somebody, so I've talked to a number of people from other chemically impacted different cities and counties. A woman from East Palestine, Ohio, that I've gotten to know really well, I thought said this perfectly. She talked about the fact that, this is Norfolk Southern for their situation, but she said, I don't expect Norfolk Southern to take care of us. I've used Norfolk Southern as the mistress, right? She doesn't have our best interest at heart, and I never expected her to. But I expect my husband, who, likened to as the city and the county, to have my best interest. And I think throughout this experience, that is what I've felt every single time. Is I don't fully know. I'm not behind the scenes. I have my guesses at why some of this is happening, but it is abundantly clear that the powers that be have not had the best interest of this community and surrounding communities. I think it's important to note that too. It's not just Rockdale County. It extends far out. The actions and inactions from both BioLab and Rockdale County don't just affect us. They've affected all of the neighboring counties as well.
And this is the thing about it, is like, from like the day after the incident occurred and people started looking into some things and this and that, and I was aware of it, I think even before that the county was involved with BioLab because there were tax abatements and the Development Authority. And the Development Authority had been able to issue through the county tax abatements, which are tax credits. They don't pay tax or a reduced tax portion. And actually, the Development Authority actually holds the deed to the land that the warehouse was on.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons how they get these abatements is through this authority and such, right? So when we look at it, it's a little bit of a conflict of interest for the county when it comes to something like this happen, because the county starts to then look at the possible liability that they've put themselves in with, this kind of situation. So that's, so the county says, oh man, we're a little bit liable with this, right? So they get a little nervous, right? And so then you say, well, what do you do when the people who are supposed to be representing you are actually also looking at, well, we're going to get in trouble too, right? So immediately, and the thing about it is, even when you look at some of these other circumstances, like in East Palestine and stuff, we're even more conflicted than they were because our government actually has a direct tie with the facility that actually contaminated and exposed individuals to harmful things, right?
Correct.
So I mean, so it's even a deeper dive than when we look at it here in Rockdale County, what's going on, and then you find out that nobody, and that's one of the reasons the county probably doesn't want to say too much or do too much because they themselves are looking at the potential liability that they're in with this situation. So if what do you do? And then, but it's been situation and issue after issue in Rockdale County. What we discovered is this with the county doing behind the door and sneaky things. We see one of the behind the door sneaky things right now going on in Rockdale County is with the Public Facilities Authority that the county created to be able to build an administrative building and do a little courthouse remodel and go around the citizens to issue $110 million worth of bonds. Mm-hmm. Because the citizens had refused to approve these bonds in an election in 2018, which the citizens of Rockdale County they would not have approved these bonds if it would have went on the ballot for what they were doing. But they found a way to bypass the citizens. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what we all look at and we all think is we feel that we're being bypassed continuously by these local officials. And that's what bothers us and upsets us as a community. The fact that we're being bypassed and just spoken at and not spoken to. Would you?
100% agree. And I think there's a consistent, underestimation of this community in all of these areas that hey, they're not going to notice. They're not going to see this. So, nothing's going to happen about it. And I think it's, same for BioLab. It feels, I can't say with absolute certainty, but it feels very obvious to me that the approach is say as little as possible. I think the thought process was once the plume is gone, everyone's gonna move on. Like everybody's gonna be done with this. And I think they're realizing that's not going to happen. That's not how people feel. Stop underestimating us. We care about this community. This is something that has impacted us on a number of fronts. And people aren't just going to move on. And I mean, certainly I was naive. I didn't even know, the history of BioLab in this community. I was finding that out in real time that this has happened again and again and again. And I think there's so much responsibility and culpability on Rockdale County's part, government in this. And, not only have they not taken accountability for that, they won't, the second that they handed operations back to BioLab, it's been radio silent from them.
Well, and then I think we also look at not only, but I said this from the first couple of days into this incident, well, BioLab won't, people were saying they won't be able, they're gone. They won't be able to operate. I said, no, they'll be able to start. They still have a business license. They still are there. There's nothing says they can't continue operating where they are at this facility. I said,
and they have a number of buildings. It's not just one. So, right. I mean, I'm sure you saw all of the different articles last week. Distribution is back up and running. Yeah, no manufacturing isn't yet. But it reads as if they have absolute intention of doing that. And I think I was personally a little naive that I thought, well, why would they want to reopen here? They've got so much backlash in this community. Why wouldn't they just want to go somewhere else? And I think, the further we've gotten along in this, the clearer it's been. That's absolutely not the case. They have every intention of reopening here.
Oh, no, and that's 100% what's going on, right? So people look at this and they get a little, well, we know what's going on, why, and people ask a lot of whys, right? And then they don't get a lot of answers back. And when we look at what BioLab is doing, they're doing exactly what I knew they were going to do. They, as soon as they got the mess cleaned up, as much as whatever, and then they're going to start going back to operations as close to normal as they can. I think when people go back to what happened in '04, it's exactly what happened in '04, right? They cleaned up their mess and they went back to work. And it's exactly what they're doing in 2024. They're cleaning up their mess and they're going back to work.
And time and prior experience has taught them we don't have to change the way we do this. We don't have to create more regulations and protocols around this, because we get a slap on the wrist every time and we're right back at it.
100%.
I don't see a world unless, and again, this is something we're working on, and I can touch on it in a little bit more detail as we move throughout, but we're working on not just for us, but nationwide, the legislation needs to change, right? There needs to be firmer, not just protocols, but repercussions for groups like this, because if they get a slap on the wrist, why on earth would they want to change, right? There's no incentive on their part. And, it's naive of us to think this isn't 100% about bottom line dollars for them. That is. And that's just big business. That's fine. It is what it is. But then it's up to the government and us as a community to push to make sure that we have those safety measures in place, to make sure I'm not jumping on this call 2 years from now having the same conversation with you because it's happened again.
Right. Well, and unfortunately, I've been at that location for 10 years, and in the 10-year time period that I've been there, I've had 3 times we've had to not be able to be there. Right. So, they all talk about a 2020 incident and then, this, but there was another small incident that occurred, since I had been there from 2014, and I can't recall what year. It might've been 18 or something. Don't really remember, but this was the 3rd time because of an incident there that I had been denied access to the property there at 1301 Olympic Court. That's, it's reality, right? You sort of remember when you're not allowed to go to work, and it's because of, a chemical company that's across the road. It's something you don't forget, right?
Right. And this is massive. Of course, like for me, I don't operate a business here. And so that hasn't been at the beginning on the forefront of my mindset. The medical side is what impacted me and my pets. And so that was first and foremost. And the economic impact, people talk about, well, they bring a lot of tax dollars in here. Yes, that's true. But think about it from the other side. For me, like as a homeowner, I have loved my home. I don't have that sense of peace and safety that I have had in the past after this. But if I put my house on the market tomorrow, you think somebody's knocking down my door to buy my house right now? No, this has been all over the news, and it should be. There's a catch-22 with that. And then you've got the local businesses who are tremendously suffering over this. And that I feel like is talked about kind of the least of everything. And you can't, obviously people's physical health is always going to be and should be number one. But secondary to that, like people that have put their heart and souls into these businesses are cut off at the knees, and there is nothing being done about that.
No, I've got a business that, like I told you, we met a group of us business folks that are right there met the other day. None of them have talked with BioLab directly. Some of them are trying to do some backdoor scenes and try to meet with them or whatever. And I do know of a couple of businesses who did get their attorneys to meet with BioLab. And you know what happened? Absolutely not one single thing. Nothing. Because BioLab is not going to do one single thing, right? And then I think which we had talked about before the show started, about a judge ruled about the class action suits being combined, which everybody knew that was going to happen because that's how that process is handled. And just so people know, yes, my company and a few of the other businesses there, we signed with one law group in particular, and we decided not to do class action suits. We're doing individual suits. We're keeping them in the local Georgia court system, right? So, and not go to federal court for this very reason. Mm-hmm. And they're going to be individual suits. They're not going to be clumped as class action. And the attorneys explained the process about how we'll be able to do that. Mm-hmm. And BioLab will file and try to get us clumped in, right? And we'll go in and have to have some appeals and whatever, but we will be able to stay individual. And they explained how we'd be able to do that, but it's maneuvering and being able to do that, and it's businesses who can actually show that we have been impacted significantly and directly, right? So we'll be able to do that, but not everybody will be able to do that, and that's why the class actions are necessary.
I think for most people, at least in my experience, and I talked to a number of attorneys, like I asked that, can we do individual? Do we have to be a part of the class action? And the response I got at every turn was, no, it's class action. That's the option here. I think if you own a business, that gives you a little bit more leverage to come at a different angle. But for everybody else, I think the class action is really the only option. And that's unfortunate on a lot of levels. And I think, a couple of things that are really important for people to understand with this is, I had never been a part of a class action or any kind of suit in the past, but I've done my research on this. This is not a quick process, one. And two, understanding, the judge appoints who's lead counsel on this. And I talked to a number of folks from East Palestine, Ohio, about their experience. We have some of the same attorneys here that did East Palestine. And, most of these huge suits, they take years and years and years and years. In East Palestine, it took about 2 years, a little under. That actually isn't a good thing. For them, they're very outspoken as a community. The process was rushed, that attorneys just wanted to kind of get that payout. And it wasn't in the best interest of the community. But I think, this is how I feel, and I don't understand this world fully by any means, but I felt, I took my time in finding the attorneys that I felt like were right for me. And I think they're ethical guys. But I would also say, I kind of feel defeated about it because, whoever is lead counsel is really running the show. And we don't get a say in that. We can speak up to the judge and ask for that. But at the end of the day, it's the judge's decision. And so a lot of the power is just kind of out of our hands in this situation.
And that's what, we knew going into it, that it was going to be that a judge would decide who the lead counsel was going to be. And that's a scary thing for anyone when they're, forced you're forced to see who your teammates are, right? You don't get a chance. You don't get the option to choose your team. Your team is being chosen for you. And actually they get to choose who the quarterback is. So,
right.
You know what I mean? So
whoever's, whatever that lead counsel's agenda is, all of a sudden that's everybody's. And again, the East Palestine folks said, some attorneys really wanted to focus on the medical side. Others wanted to focus more on the economic or the housing impact, things like that. And it all just didn't matter. Whoever was lead counsel and what their focus was is what it ended up being all about. So, if you were kind of in a camp where you were affected more in this one direction, and that's not what the lead counsel was going with, you were kind of just out of luck.
Well, and that's what I think you've got the issue with here is what they can prove right now. I think with the medical stuff, this is the problem. And this is what I've heard experts talk about and the people I know. You might not truly know the impact for 20 years.
Right.
So there's why they find it difficult to make that the lead portion of the suit, is because they're suing now. And they've got to provide evidence and information now, right? And that stuff that's going to be years and years developing. So economic impact and other factors are the things they're going to be looking at primary rather than health secondary, because that's such a prolonged and out there situation that it's. Would you not say people told you the same thing probably as me? It's an unknown. We don't really know.
And I don't, I'm very mindful, and I want to be aware of not spreading misinformation or fear mongering, things like that. But ultimately, you look at the list of chemicals, which we now finally have through open record requests, there's not, it's a heavy list. It's a heavy list. And I think realistically, I can't imagine that there aren't going to be long-term repercussions for a lot of people in this community, given the heavy exposure that we all experienced. And what those are, there's not a lot of research out there to date about specifically multiple chemical exposure. So this is something Scott Smith is very outspoken about. For those that don't know, he came down here and did a lot of testing of properties. And there's just, this chemical in a vacuum does X, Y, and Z. This chemical in a vacuum does X, Y, and Z. But you don't know when they come together what that really means. And that's going to be, to your point, some of us, myself included, experienced, symptoms right from the start. that have dissipated for a lot of folks as the plume went away or in the weeks after. But that's the front end experience. You're talking about lifelong, different diseases or cancers that could come out of this in the long run that we won't see 5-10 years.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing about it, and many, a lot of folks have talked about this, right? It's like we don't know what's going to happen, right?
Mhm.
And people are confused about it; they're concerned about it. And then when you talked about what these attorneys are going to do, they're going to, well, what can we do now that we can prove?
Right.
And that's what they're going to focus on, and it's going to be those things. And then by doing that, then they also have to say, okay, we can't prove these things, so we're going to have to sort of double up on what we're doing here because we know we're going to have issues with this that we're going to have them compensated for. And that's why when you talked a minute ago about, East Palestine, they hurried up and settled in a 2-year time period. It was to settle so that they don't have to deal with the long-term impacts 20 years from now.
Exactly.
That's the reasoning behind that. And, and you and I both get that because we've talked to individuals, and that's what they've told us. Well, this is why, it's bad if it goes on too long, and it's bad if it goes too short. So apparently there's a Goldilocks spot, right?
Yeah.
That's just right. And then it's finding that what is just right. And I think it's going to depend on the circumstances in this particular suit with BioLab, what that just right spot ends up being. I mean, but we're, and there's nothing about it. And what amazed me was the lack of apparent interest of the state or the federal government. This was a major chemical disaster that happened in a major metropolitan Atlanta. I mean, in an area because the city of Atlanta was impacted, right? So you've got this impact of millions of people, and it really did, like you talked about, outside of Rockdale County.
Yeah.
And you didn't have the federal government. You've not had the governor of the state of Georgia say one single thing about this incident, and it's very concerning to me when we don't have our state and federal officials. I think Hank Johnson did come out and talk about about BioLab needs not be here or whatever, and I think we've talked about that too. It's like when BioLab first came to Rockdale County in 1973, it came to a county that had 25,000 people or so in it, a very little sleepy community, and where it built, there was nothing. And then what unfortunate development occurred around BioLab, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, because Rockdale County is a small landmass county, the infrastructure, sewer and water is in a small area. So that's what's going on, right? So that they're,
Yeah. And I think it's important to note that I think part of the reason originally is right when this happened was Hurricane Helene, right? And so, that was what the media was heavily focused on. And there were a few days, maybe even a week, where it was, national news. But it didn't get that media attention because there was and you also have, an election coming up and all of this, and we just kind of got buried. And it's one thing that's been, top priority for me in trying to figure out how can we get back in the media, because the media is what applies pressure, to elected officials. And that's, one thing we're doing, the event that I know you're going to be a part of. We're still finalizing a few details, but anybody, if you're on the Stand Against BioLab Facebook page, we'll be posting it on there this upcoming week. But December 3rd, we're doing two things. We're doing a press conference, and there are people coming down from East Palestine and other chemically impacted communities. We want to speak on a united front and kind of show this isn't a one-off issue. This isn't a Rockdale County issue. This is a national issue that it really needs to be addressed. And then additionally, we're going to do a community forum where, Larry, you'll be speaking kind of, we're going to have a resident panel of folks in this community that are impacted. We're also going to have folks from places like East Palestine, a separate panel. And then we're also going to have a fabulous woman, Dr. Gollum, who is one of the few doctors who really deals in research with this chemical exposure and what that means, as well as Scott Smith, who should have more results back at that point. And I think this is something the media has already, said they're signed on. They're going to be covering this. And a lot of the messaging, this is really, it's getting answers to the community, but it's also elected officials. We want you to understand that this isn't going away for us. Take it seriously and get involved.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, and I want to apologize to the audience. I got mentioned last week. Restream has changed everything on me, and there's more buttons I have to push to make things happen. And I apologize for not getting the chat up in the overlay until just now, but the chat is up in the overlay now, my guys. And I mean, I've got to get used to this new studio. They sent a tutorial, a video on it, Madeline, but doesn't sort of work like the tutorial said it does,
Yeah.
But and they're always tweaking on it when they do these upgrades. So there we go. So if you don't mind, I do want to pause for a second and say hi to some people that are in the chat. So if you guys wouldn't mind, I'll go here and look a little bit. So Cheryl Moulton, thanks for joining us. Mary Boysworth, Charlotte Geller, George Kilichek, the taxpayer, Gloria English, nice to have you. William Campbell, good to have you. Clayton Orwig, Justin Kinney, my soon-to-be colleague on the Board of Education. Corliss Turner, great to have you here tonight. Luca Russo, great to have you here tonight, Ms. Russo. Cheryl and Ben Garcia, great to have you guys here tonight. I think that's going to be almost everyone. I think I've done myself justice catching up on that. So, but yeah, and people have talked about the water and what's being tested and not being tested.
Right.
And you're right. So one of them mentioned they're just testing for certain things. And you mentioned all these other chemicals. They're not testing for all these other possibilities. Right.
And it's important to note, they did not do comprehensive testing on the water in the first place. Actually, Cheryl Garcia, that's on this call, she's been amazing at open records, requests and getting a lot of information. And she just had them send over recently kind of how they tested. They publicly said they were testing 3 times a day. That's not what's showing in the report that Cheryl got, that they even did that. The EPA was in East Palestine for months and months and months on end testing. They were here for 3 weeks. Testing has been honestly just, as I would say, it's been a joke. They didn't test the debris. They haven't done soil testing, all of these different areas that, we're flying blind. Thank goodness Scott Smith came down here and did this testing. We're waiting on more of those results. But otherwise, we wouldn't have any information really at all about our health and what we've been exposed to. And the water in particular, I find very concerning, the lack of testing there, because there were already some question marks around the health of our water.
Well, and I do know Alex and I have talked with Scott, and as soon as Scott gets some more definitive stuff back, he's going to come back on and do a show with us about the results and such. So, because people want to know. And anyway,
right.
And what I respect about Scott is he just doesn't want to jump out there and say things until he's got his proof, right? So, and if anybody knows, Scott, after he got his proof, said certain things in East Palestine, and he was criticized, and actually, people, whatever, but you can look and see, Scott was actually validated at some, what he had said was accurate, and people had to back up and say sort of an apology toward Scott because, he what he said was accurate, and he waited till he got the information before he talked about it, and what he said was accurate. And that's what he told me all along. He says, I'm not going to say things that I can't prove.
Right.
And that I don't have backup for. So, you got to think guys like Scott who have went through their own disasters, and they know what it's like to be ignored, pushed around, not told the truth, as we like to say. We're not being told the truth, right?
Yeah.
But a lot of it, we're being lied to through omission, right? By not telling us we're being lied to. And, well, how can that be. Well, that's what it is. It is what it is. But but I am looking forward to participating in your forum and speaking at that and giving people the perspective of a business person who has went through a lot in this. Like I said at the beginning of the show, I have 3 properties that I actually have under lease right at this moment to deal with this disaster. Right. But, it was being proactive and doing this and being able to have resources and having the contacts to be able to. A lot of people just don't have the resources and the contacts to be able to do this.
Right. And BioLab is nowhere to be found, and nor are resources through Rockdale County for anybody.
No, they're not. And so that's what we're doing, so
I'm really excited about the event. I encourage everybody to come. My last holdup is that we're locking down that venue for it. I should have that in the next 24 to 48 hours. And then I'll get that out to everybody. But I would encourage everybody on this call, come kind of hear from all of these different experts and residents. And also, the more people that show up and show out, the more seriously the elected officials that really are the powers that be in a situation like this will take this. They can see, oh, this community is, it's not just 1 or 2 people ringing this bell. This is throughout the community. We need that everybody to show up to show that to them so that they actually take that.
So Corliss asked just now, when is the event? So if you want to actually tell people when and where.
December 3rd. It will be Tuesday, December 3rd at 6:30 is when it'll start. The where is the hold off. It's going to be local, and it's likely going to be at a church. I'm talking to a couple different ones. We're just locking in that location, and that, again, 24 or 48 hours, I'll have that locked in, and I'll be able to specifically say, if you're on the Stand Against BioLab page, I will have all of the posters, everything posted in there in the next day or so with all of those details, speakers and all of that.
Yeah, and that's good. And people need to know what's going on and need to be made aware, and they need to be felt like that they've not been forgotten. And that's one of the things here on the show that we'll come back and visit issues long after the initial happening, so that people know they've not been forgotten and that we know what's going on. So, Madeline, how's your horse?
He's not great. I don't want to, it's complicated details, but what he has is called heaves. And that happens at chemical exposure, irritants, allergies can all kind of cause that. Once you're diagnosed with it, it is permanent. It's about kind of mitigating the symptoms. And to date, we haven't really been able to keep them under control with any of the medications that we've tried. Now he's at a stage where naturally the stuff kind of gets better in the winter with the cold. So we think we're optimistic that we can keep it under control through the winter. But at this phase, we've got a couple Hail Marys I'm going to try. I think likely I'll be saying goodbye to him next summer. And that's pretty gut wrenching. He's my best buddy. I'm able to give him a really nice life. And again, it's a big part of what fuels my fire in all of this, that he was fine a few days before, all the way up till BioLab, a few days after all of this happened. And I just don't think that's a coincidence. I think it's directly related to that chemical exposure.
I got you. I mean, and that's why, when we talk about, we don't know the full impact of this, right? And we won't for years.
Right.
And that's something we need to be concerned about. So guys, like I said, don't let this incident go and just slip into the darkness, right? Ask questions, make sure you stay in contact with people. And what Corliss says here, has anybody reached out to the new administration about LabAB and what their goal is?
Yes, we definitely have reached out. We're continuing to reach out. And this is something, all of our elected officials from city, county, state, federal are invited to this forum that we're doing. The press release we'll do in the press conference we'll do in the morning. They're all invited to come to this. They are, we're getting all of that information. We're sending the press release out this upcoming week. But we very much so hope that people that the elected officials attend and kind of hear from the community what our questions, concerns are, what we want to see. Because so far, again, the people that are currently in office have not been particularly interested in doing that.
Yeah, and and unfortunately, you'll find that, right? Especially when they go into defense mode, right? Because it's like they have an interest. You know what I mean? The development authority has an interest in it, so that means the county somewhat has an interest in it, and depends on what day of the week it is, whether the development authority and the county know each other or not. And but at the end of the day, you've got to be very careful when you're dealing with the government entities, because they will walk off from these things and not want to commit. So because they want to protect themselves from liability,
right?
And that's just what it is, right? So you have
self-preservation.
It does. It comes down to that. So we've been in this battle here in Rockdale County for years about a lot of different things, right? So it is what it is, and it's just welcome to the fight, Madeline. That's all I got to tell you. Welcome to the fight. So
into it.
Yeah. So Corliss, the tax abatement until 29. That's right. They did get a 10-year tax abatement from 2019 to 2029. So that a lot of that's what this is about. So So if you want to, I know we talked about you were going to come on the majority of the show, which you came on about 3/4 so far. So do you have anything else you'd like to say and wrap up, and then I'll let you do that, and then I'll go and talk about a few other little things as we do. But what if you want to go ahead and remind people about the event, just wrap up, and then we'll move on from there.
Absolutely. Yep. So event is December 3rd. Come with questions, please show up again. Oh, I'm so sorry. My dog, here's your dog. She's going a little crazy. Come with questions, please. Show up. I think that that's the biggest thing here, is not just for this event, but use your voice, please. Our elected officials, the only way that they'll take things seriously is if they realize this community takes it seriously. And I know the plume is gone, and so it's easy to kind of, hey, move on, right? It's out of sight, out of mind, and it's so important that we as a community do not do that, or we're going to be in this same situation again, whether it's BioLab or it's another company here. They're not the ones that aren't following regulations as they should be. So I would just encourage everybody to get involved. Please visit Stand Against BioLab in Rockdale County Facebook page. I've got a volunteer form there as well if you want to get specifically involved in a particular area. That form.
Well, we thank you for everything that you've done for this, Madeline, and we continue to do. And I will be talking with you about the event and what I'm supposed to do moving forward. Thank you for joining us tonight, and I look forward to seeing you and talking to you later.
Absolutely. Thank you again, Larry.
Thank you, and good night. So Madeline has left us right now, so that's thank her for coming on the show, sharing some information. I do not know why Molly Cox was upset tonight. The election is over, and all the political ads are off. And usually, what stirs Molly up is the political ads. So there was a certain candidate that she did not like, and I will publicly say it. It was not the winner. So one of the candidates, when they came on the TV, Molly would bark at them every time they came on. So that's usually what we had right now. That's not Tucker. That is Molly. So I don't know what's upsetting her, because I'm behind the closed doors. But I know it's not political advertising. That's usually what would get her upset. And that's not happening right now. So I'll have to find out what's going on a little bit later on. So but I just wanted to thank Madeline for coming on. Thank her for her insight and everything that she's doing on behalf of people that have been impacted by the BioLab thing. So just touch on another little subject for you guys to know. This Tuesday at 4 p.m., the Rockdale County Board of Education will be having a called meeting, and someone will be coming and doing a little bit of education, informing the board about the House Bill 581 and what that looks like and what that means. So I recommend you good citizens go out, listen to this person's presentation, and you might need to let the board know that you do not want them to opt out of 581. Just so you know, I am not on the board yet, will be on the board in January, and my position is to not opt out. And I know several people that I'm on the board with, their position is to also not opt out. So I think you just want to go there, make sure these guys know what they're doing, so that your voice is heard and that you know what's going on. So again, this Tuesday there's a special called meeting at 4 p.m. where they will be having this conversation about that. So, and then the regular Board of Education meeting is this coming Thursday at 7 p.m. So it is very important that you attend these things. It's very important that we attend these meetings to let your voice be heard, to let elected officials know that you're watching and that you're listening. So it is very important that elected officials know that you're watching and you're listening, because if they think you're asleep at the wheel, they will do what they wish to you. And that's just reality, folks. And you're hearing an elected official telling you, do not let me be unguided. Do not let me be someone that is not held accountable to you for all this time, right? So come on, guys, let's go ahead. So actually, Bill, they said that it would have cost the taxpayers. It would have cost the system $42 million the past 6 years, not the coming 6 years, is what I was told that their data showed. So yeah, guys, like I said, show up and make sure that elected officials know you're watching, know you're listening, and let your voices be heard. Because it's very important. So I do know they are going to video this special meeting. They usually don't video the special call meetings, but they are going to tape this one so it's available for people to watch. So I like to, I've made it a point that I want to attend all of the trainings and meetings until I take office, but I'm actually attending a training in Perry, Georgia on Tuesday and Wednesday. So I would not be available to this. So they did let me know that they will be videoing this, and it will be available the next day. So I will have access to watch this at my leisure. And then you will also have access to watch this at your leisure. So make sure you do. Make sure you stay involved. Make sure you stay informed on everything that's going on. Because if you don't stay active and informed, and if you go to sleep at the wheel, trust me, you will be taken advantage of. I know this. I tell you this. Make sure that you know what's going on, and make sure that you hold those accountable who are representing you, because that's the only way that we keep Rockdale County on the right direction, and resetting Rockdale is holding those people who are elected to office accountable for their actions and their decisions. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you for joining me tonight. Thank you for, as always, joining me on Speak Your Mind with Larry Cox, because it's very important that you have a voice and you have a say of what's going on in our community. So guys, thank you. And I want to, so that you appreciate, let you know that I appreciate each and every one of you. So I want to leave you tonight by telling you this. You have a voice, use it. Speak your mind and be heard. Thank you and good night. I'll see you next Sunday.